Hello, let's do ions of variable charge. Atoms of the transition metals can form ions with different charges, and so that's a complication that we just have to learn how to deal with. For example, iron can be occurring as iron 2 plus or iron 3 plus. So how do we deal with that? This is another example. Now they look very different, these liquids or these solutions, but they're both containing chromium. The yellow one is chromium 3 plus and the orangey one is chromium 6 plus. So these are just a couple of examples, and we'll see quite a few others that you have to look out for. Now, how can we tell that we've got ions of variable charge? If we look at our table here, we can see let's get a nice red. We can see a copper here, but we can see a copper there. So here's an example of an ion that has variable charge. What else have we got? We've got an iron here and an iron here. We've got a tin here and a tin here. Now, can you see a similarity between the ones that I'm highlighting? Hopefully you may have seen that when they have variable charge, they have a Roman numeral after their name, and that Roman numeral corresponds to the charge, and so that's how we identify which ion we're talking about. Because, for example, we could have two substances which we could theoretically call iron oxide, and it could be formed with this ion or this ion. Now, it could have the formula FeO or Fe2. Oops, Fe. Let's draw that again. Fe. Where's my eraser? There we are. Right. So we could have FeO, but we could also have Fe2O3. Now this one is the compound of iron oxide that has Fe2 plus in it, and this one is the compound iron oxide that has Fe3 plus in it. And very different things, and therefore chemists who want to use iron oxide need to know which iron oxide they are using, because they have very different properties, and so that's what we're going to learn. So in reality, iron, this is referred to as iron Roman numerals 2 oxide, whereas this one is referred to as iron Roman numerals 3 oxide, and that would be the full name for it, and we're going to go through a couple of examples of that as well. So the key things for you to recognize here is just that whenever you see these Roman numerals, make sure you're using the right one that you've been told, or if you're naming something, it becomes important. Right, next. So let's do a couple of examples. Name the compound CuO and give the formula for iron 2 chloride. So if we look at CuO, what they're saying here, and you can read this for example, is with CuO, this is our question mark. We don't know the charge of this guy, but we do know the charge of oxide, and it's always -2. It's not a variable ion, and therefore if that's -2 and you only have in the formula 1 copper, that tells you that it must be copper 2 plus, because the charge balance. This is where your understanding of writing the correct formula comes into play. And so if you understand how you write correct formulas for ionic compounds, either using the crossover method or the imaginary balances, you'll understand where that comes from. So that's what they're saying here. And so the correct name for it is actually copper Roman numeral 2 oxide. If you miss out that Roman numeral, you haven't answered the question, and therefore you're wrong. Now, what about iron 3 or iron 2 chloride? Sorry. So that tells us that it's iron 2 plus, and we're combining it with chlorine minus 1. You can use the crossover technique if you like. That tells you you need 2 chlorines, and so the formula therefore will be FeCl2. There we go. That's alright. Going from name to formula is pretty straightforward, because clearly they have to write the correct formula. Going from the formula to the name is a bit trickier for students. Be on the lookout for that. What else have we got here? Now, we've got a animation that, or a little animation simulation that should be available on your OneNote, and so give it a try, and hopefully your Java will work for it in OneNote. It will be in the section, and if it doesn't work, we'll just do it as a class, and I'll demonstrate that to you. So that was just there to remind me to say that. And in the next video, we're going to look at things called polyatomic ions. So we just learned about variable charge ions. Now we're going to learn the next thing, which are called polyatomic ions, which, if you remember, I mentioned in an earlier video. Alright, cheerio.